Part 31. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 301. The body of the fire phoenix turned into a streak of fire and disappeared. Chen Hao does not plan to use the vein stone to ascend and evolve his beast, because using the vein stone to ascend and evolve his beast will cause half of the vein beast's body to become mechanized. This is not what Chen Hao wants to see. But the golden mantis card can be used as equipment, just like using second-level gems to upgrade Tailai's genes. Chen Hao releases Xiaobai. Xiaobai's figure appeared in front of Chen Hao. Xiaobai opened his eyes, revealing his golden eyes, and looked at Chen Hao, "Master." Chen Hao said with a smile, "I heard that all human empires have gone to war." Chen Hao could notice that Xiaobai's golden eyes condensed slightly. Chen Hao's smile became gentle, "Although the flower god has been watching from the Tailai Empire these days, I think, the Tailai Empire needs you more now." As Yinglong, Xiaobai's eyes slowly softened and he looked at Chen Hao, "Master, I want to return to the Taril Empire." Hearing this, Chen Hao nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Go, remember our agreement." Xiaobai's eyes lit up slightly, and he nodded, "Thank you, Master, Xiaobai, I'll take my leave." With that said, Xiaobai saluted Chen Hao, then slowly turned around and left. Chen Hao looked at Xiaobai's back and walked out of the door. Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows. "There is concern." Xiaobai stayed in the Tailai Empire for a period of time. During this time, it obviously experienced something, and it now has concerns. Good thing. Chen Hao showed a satisfied smile, "Children all need to grow up." Chen Hao withdrew his gaze and released the green deer. The humanoid deer girl appeared in front of Chen Hao. Its eyes were shining and it looked at Chen Hao. When it saw Chen Hao, it had a smile on its face, "Master." Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled, "Congratulations, you have grown up again." When the deer girl heard this, she smiled, her eyes narrowed slightly, and the colorful luster inside shone. Her smile was particularly healing. The deer girl wants to dedicate everything she has to her master. If my growth can bring success to my master, to make a profit, that's good. Chen Hao scratched the back of his head, coughed, and said with a smile, "There is nothing to do now, you can move around freely." Okay, deer girl smiled. Chen Hao released the other strange beasts one by one. Felian, Cheng Huang, Guangming Diao or Taiyan Yueying have no changes in appearance. Gene upgrading does not seem to bring about changes in the appearance of the beast. It may also be because these strange beasts are satisfied with their current appearance and are unwilling to make changes. It doesn't matter, it's a good thing if they grow. Chen Hao let them all move freely. After they all left, Chen Hao flipped through the book. I don't know how Diamond Egg is doing now. Chen Hao opened it and looked at the card slot where the Diamond Egg was previously placed. Enter the eye. Chen Hao's eyes narrowed slightly. Hatched. First level gem diamond. Type, Gemin. Features, physical destruction, physical resistance, physical control, mental destruction, mental resistance, mental control. Ah, Chen Hao was stunned. Chen Hao never expected that such a thing could happen. This means Hexagram God of War. Chen Hao has been wandering around the world of gems. Among the gems he has seen, there are only 3 characteristics that have the most characteristics. I never expected that this diamond would have 6 characteristics. Is this a coincidence? Suddenly, an idea flashed in Chen Hao's mind. Book. Universal Book. Chen Hao frowned. Chen Hao had used the Universal Book to hatch alien eggs before, and even the eggs that had stopped hatching could still be hatched. This means that when placed in a book, the book will give the hatching egg the most perfect living environment. Will diamond eggs gain characteristics based on their living environment? So, this diamond beast has 6 characteristics. Thinking of this, Chen Hao slowly stretched his eyebrows. He can be sure that this is definitely not a coincidence. If it is not a coincidence, it can only be the credit of the book. It's really good. Chen Hao smiled. First level gem diamond. Type, Gemin. Features, physical destruction, physical resistance, physical control, mental destruction, mental resistance, mental control. Taming degree, 100%. Diamond, is it the same type as buy? Put it out and see. Change. The card turned into a figure. Chen Hao looked at the little guy in front of him and blinked. This little guy is about 1.3 meters tall and has a slender figure. He has twin ponytails made of diamonds that end abruptly at his waist. It is made entirely of diamonds, but its main diamond features are its hair, eyes, and nails. Apart from these, the rest of the body is covered with fair skin. It looks like a girl of 12 or 13 years old, but actually has no gender characteristics at all. Like all gem beasts Chen Hao has seen, it is genderless. After Chen Hao sighed a little, he raised his hand. Black mist enveloped its body and turned into a black garment. At this moment, the little guy had his eyes closed. His eyelashes moved and he slowly opened his eyes. A pair of diamond eyes were revealed, glowing with a colorful halo under the luster. It raised its face slightly and looked at Chen Hao sitting on the sofa. Chen Hao's appearance was reflected in her eyes. As soon as it saw Chen Hao, its eyes lit up slightly. Master. Its sound is clear and silvery, like a child's call. But when it made a sound, its eyebrows slightly arched. He looked uneasy. She looked like a little girl who had just come out of kindergarten and was full of worries. Chen Hao smiled. Well, hello. Master, what is my name? It asked cautiously. Its voice was very low, as if it was afraid of making Chen Hao angry. Chen Hao smiled and said, your name is Little Diamond. Little Diamond hummed, but it still looked sad. Master, Little Diamond feels so weak. Huh? Chen Hao blinked and said with a smile, why do you feel like this? I just feel so weak. Little Diamond said with a bitter face, I feel that no one is so weak now, and I feel like I can't beat anyone. If I can't beat others, I can't protect the master. If I can't protect the master will be hurt. If the master is injured, I will feel very uncomfortable. If I feel uncomfortable, I feel that I may die. If I die and the master is injured, then who can protect the master? What if no one protects the master? What if the master does not? If someone were to protect him, if he died, then, that would be terrible. I can't be so weak. I have to protect my master. I want to become stronger, but how do I become stronger? Chen Hao was stunned. This guy was Tang Seng in his previous life, right? Wait a minute. Chen Hao hurriedly spoke out, interrupting its seemingly endless soliloquy. Little Diamond raised his face. It had a sad look on its face, which looked like a bitter gourd. Master. Its eyes were watery. Chen Hao smiled bitterly. Don't think so much, you are already strong enough. But, I feel so weak. Little Diamond made a sad face. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 302. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Diamond looked bitter, lowered his head, and muttered anxiously. Chen Hao scratched his head. Every beast has its own personality, but this is the first time Chen Hao has seen a beast with a personality like Diamond. Chen Hao thought for a while and was about to say something. Woo woo. Suddenly, there was a cry. Chen Hao was stunned, but found that Diamond was crying aggrievedly. Diamond was the size of a primary school student. Now when he cried, he was like a primary school student whose lollipop was taken away and was very aggrieved. This, Chen Hao was a little confused. Diamond, Chen Hao suddenly said. Diamond was startled, then came to his senses, choked, wiped the tears from his face with his little hands, then blinked his big eyes and looked at Chen Hao. Master. Chen Hao smiled, "Don't worry, I have a way to improve your strength." Diamond's diamond-like eyes reflected the colorful halo, and when he heard Chen Hao's words, his eyes lit up slightly. "Really?" "Of course it's true." Chen Hao smiled and said, "Do you think the master will lie to you?" It shook its head. Chen Hao continued, "The master will help you improve your strength, as long as you agree to the master, and tell the master if you have any ideas in the future. Don't hold yourself back and cry, understand?" Diamond nodded, "Yeah, yeah." Chen Hao looked at Diamond's well-behaved and expectant face, and he smiled helplessly. It seems that this Diamond not only has the speed of Tang Monk's speech, but also has a phobia of insufficient firepower. However, Diamond has the strength of a first-level gem, and has 6 unique attributes. With this strength, he can basically walk sideways in the entire VAF continent. Since it feels that its strength is not enough, then we should improve its strength. Chen Hao took out a second-level gem card from the Universal Book. Transform. The card transformed into the appearance of a gem. Chen Hao handed the diamond-shaped object that looked like a black gem to Little Diamond. Little Diamond took it, looked at the little thing, and then looked at Chen Hao. Chen Hao smiled and said, "Eat it, merge its power, and you can become more powerful than you are now." Hearing this, Little Diamond's eyes lit up slightly, and it hummed, put the black gem in its mouth, and swallowed it. Diamond looked down at her body, then looked at Chen Hao. "Master, is this all right?" "But, I don't think my strength has changed much." Chen Hao crossed his arms, crossed his legs, leaned against the sofa, and said, "Fusion takes time, and you will become stronger tomorrow. But before that, in order to avoid accidents, you have to rest first." Diamond nodded repeatedly, and suddenly, it said, "Then, if I rest, who will protect the master?" Its face was full of worry again. "I can protect the master, don't worry," Xiao Ying's voice sounded. Diamond looked at Xiao Ying, and it looked at Xiao Ying. Its eyes were shining, but its worried little face was full of worry. Chen Hao smiled and said, "Don't worry and rest, Xiao Ying will protect me." Diamond heard it, it came back to its senses, and looked at Chen Hao. "Master said so, then okay." As it said, Diamond looked at Xiao Ying, "Then you have to protect the master." Diamond's body turned into a card, floating in front of Chen Hao. Chen Hao took the card and looked at the little diamond depicted on the card. The little diamond in the picture still had a bitter face and looked pitiful. This little guy was born with a bitter face. However, with this small body and small face, it is still quite cute. Chen Hao put the card into the book. Big Pig. Chen Hao closed the book, and the Universal Book disappeared. The figure of the Big Pig appeared in front of Chen Hao. It put its hands on its chest, saluted Chen Hao, and then looked at Chen Hao with a smile. "Master." Chen Hao said, "Lan, how is the fun?" The Big Pig smiled and said, "Xiao Dai took Lan to visit many places yesterday and met other brothers and sisters. She looked very satisfied and happy." Hearing this, Chen Hao nodded slightly, and he smiled and said, "Lan is our guest. If there is anything she needs, try to satisfy her." "Okay," the Big Pig responded. "Go and call the big wolf, the second wolf and the third wolf. I want to give them something." Chen Hao crossed his arms and smiled elegantly and casually. The Big Pig nodded and disappeared. Chen Hao watched the Big Pig leave. He lazily went to the sofa and looked at the ceiling above. In the Laiyan city of the Laiyan Empire, a noble young woman sat on the sofa knitting clothes. A little girl was sitting by the window, looking at the distant blue sky. From the blue sky, you can also see the outline of a huge sphere. "Mom, that place has been in the sky for a long time." "What on earth is that thing?" The little girl's voice was full of doubt. When the noble young woman heard it, she looked at the spherical outline in the sky, and then looked at the little girl, who was looking at the spherical outline curiously. The noble young woman smiled lovingly. "That is the God realm, where the gods live." "God realm," The little girl looked at the young woman. Mom, didn't you say you didn't know a few days ago? You and Dad looked very scared at that time. The noble young woman smiled and said, just because I didn't know it then doesn't mean I don't know it now. The high priest of the Temple of Light gave an explanation. It is the realm of the gods, a new world created by the God of creation. In that place, there live many gods, including the God of Light. The God of Light, I know the God of Light. The little girl smiled and said, Mom said before that it was the God of Light, the God who gave us light, and a very powerful God. But the little girl was puzzled. What is the God of creation? The noble young woman smiled, stopped her work, touched the little girl's hair, and explained, the God of creation is the God who created everything we know, even the God of Light was created by it. So, the God of Light has to call the God of creation Master. The God of creation is so powerful. The little girl's eyes were full of stars. The noble young woman smiled and said, it's so powerful. The realm of the gods in the sky that you see is created by the God of creation. It's powerful, isn't it? So powerful. The little girl nodded repeatedly. The young noblewoman smiled. She looked out the window, at the huge circular outline in the blue sky outside the window. I hope that the Lord of creation can bless us. At the same time, in front of Chen Hao, the big wolf, the second wolf and the third wolf stood side by side. The second wolf had already eaten the second level gem. But the big wolf and the third wolf did not eat it. Chen Hao looked at the big wolf. The big wolf was holding the second level gem, and its eyes were hesitant. Chen Hao raised his eyebrows slightly and said, what's wrong? The big wolf looked at Chen Hao, and its expression was hesitant. Master, I'm thinking, is there any meaning for me to continue to become stronger? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 303. Chen Hao didn't expect that the silly big wolf would ask such a question. This means that the big wolf has begun to think independently. Chen Hao smiled. Does it need meaning to become strong? Hearing this, Big Wolf looked at Chen Hao. No, Big Wolf doesn't want to question the master, it's just the master. Since I became a god. It raised its hand and shook its palm. It looked at Chen Hao. I feel that I have no enemies in the world of VAV continent. And master, you have the protection of so many brothers and sisters, and you will not be hurt again. I don't know that. Why do you continue to become stronger? I don't know what it means to become stronger. Master, can you give Big Wolf the answer? Hearing this, Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows and looked at the three wolves. He laughed and said, do the three wolves think so too? The three wolves didn't eat it either. The three wolves scratched their faces, and smiled awkwardly and said, I think it's good to increase my strength, but I promised to accompany Xiao Feng Guo today, and after eating it, I have to rest, so. Oh, accompany my wife. Chen Hao smiled and nodded slightly. He smiled and said, then you go and accompany it first. You take this gem with you. Come to me when you are ready. The three wolves' eyes lit up and they smiled, thank you, master. With that said, the three wolves ran out of the door. Chen Hao looked at the three wolves' backs and touched his chin. The three wolves are the most sensible among the three wind wolves who have been trained up to now. But now he looks like a maniac who dotes on his wife. Chen Hao's eyes fell on the big wolf again. Chen Hao was sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed and his hands together casually. He looked at the big wolf and said with a smile, Big Wolf, what do you want to do next? The big wolf was startled. It touched the wolf's head with its long wolf-haired hand and looked at Chen Hao with a silly look. Master, I want to be like the big dragon and the second dragon. I want to have sex with Carol first. The wolf pups will grow up with them, the big wolf will think about it later. Karo, Chen Hao looked at the big wolf. The big wolf came back to his senses and said awkwardly, "That's my wife, the Wind Wolf." He said that he also wanted a name, and then he gave himself this name. Hearing this, Chen Hao nodded slightly. "It's a good name. I heard from Carol that this name was the name of a female adventurer in an adventure group she met in the World of Warcraft forest. She liked this name very much," Big Wolf explained. Chen Hao looked at the big human wolf-like wolf in front of him and looked at its muscles. He nodded slightly. "Come here." When the big wolf heard this, it looked at Chen Hao and slowly walked to Chen Hao. Chen Hao raised his face and looked at the 2-meter-tall wolf standing in front of him. The big wolf looked at Chen Hao's move of raising his face. It slowly squatted down, then half-knelt in front of Chen Hao, lowering its head slightly. Chen Hao looked at Big Wolf's actions, smiled and sat up. The big hand stretched out and touched the big wolf's head. Feeling the warmth from Chen Hao's big hand, the big wolf slowly lowered his head, slowly closed his eyes, and the upright wolf ears also drooped. Behind it, the wolf's tail waggled. "Growing up, I remember when you were little, I could pick you up with one hand, but now I can't even cover your head with my hands," Chen Hao said with a gentle smile. The big wolf slowly opened his wolf pupils, their pupils glowing with luster. "In this case," Chen Hao said softly, "then you go do what you want to do, and remember to treat Carol well." The big wolf was startled. It raised its face and looked at Chen Hao. "Master." Chen's smile was elegant and gentle. "Even human children will grow up and be independent one day. Now you also have the ability to think independently and have your own things you want to do. Then do it." The big wolf's eyes lit up, and a smile appeared on its wolf face. "Master, thank you." Chen Hao smiled. He took back his hand, sat on the sofa, and folded his hands around his chest. "Keep Bayu here. Whenever you feel that your strength is not enough, come back to me." The big wolf was startled, then nodded slightly. "Okay, master." After saying that, it stood up slowly, took 2 steps back, turned around and left. Suddenly, the big wolf paused slightly, and then looked back at Chen Hao. "Master, although there are so many brothers and sisters around the master, the big wolf may not be able to help the master much, but if the master needs to go to the big wolf's place, you can call the big wolf back anytime." These words reminded Chen Hao of Dalong, who had left before. Chen Hao watched the big wolf's back leave from the gate. Sure enough, the child grew up. When children grow up, they will always have things they want to do. Big wolf. Chen Hao slowly closed his eyes. I recalled that when the big wolf was a child, he would rub his ankles and think about how he prepared various forms because he wanted to ride him. Now, the big wolf has a lover and his own ideas, and his world is no longer just the owner. Chen Hao slowly opened his eyes, lying on the sofa and looking at the ceiling above. Big wolf is like his own child, watching the child grow up, think independently, and find what he wants to do. This is something to be happy about, but I don't know why, but I feel a little disappointed for no reason. Master, Xiaoying will never leave the master. Xiaoying will always be by Chen Hao's side. A voice came from beside him. Chen Hao looked at the source of the sound and saw Xiaoying standing aside, its eyes looking at Chen Hao. Master, me too, a voice came. Chen Hao came to his senses and saw Big Pig standing over there. Me too, accompanied by a colorful halo, the dear girl appeared aside and looked at Chen Hao with a smile. Master, and Me Xiadi also appeared beside him. Seeing this, Chen Hao couldn't help but smile. He stood up and said with a smile, "Why do I feel like a lonely old man? Also, Big Pig, dear girl, Xiadi, you should pay attention to it. I know you are kind-hearted, but prospecting master's privacy is not a good thing." When the dear girl heard this, she smiled. "I thought the master liked this." Chen Hao rolled his eyes and looked at Big Pig. "What are Big Bear and Fire Fox doing now?" Big Pig said, Big Bear is now with the god of the earth, asking for advice on how to create the god of the earth's domain. Chen Hao was startled. The earth god realm? Why does it suddenly want to create the earth god realm? Big Pig thought for a moment, and then continued, although Big Bear didn't say the reason, I guess it's because there's not enough space. How to say? A while ago, the Big Bear used his divine power to create 5 mountains in the god realm. Then I found the Big Bear and told it that the god realm is a part of my body. If it wants to change the environment, it only needs to follow I said just fine, there's no need for it to waste time. Then the Big Bear came up with the idea of creating the earth god's domain. I think it wanted to create a territory of its own. Chen Hao touched his chin. It's a little strange, forget it, just call me and ask. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 304. Change. A card floated in front of Chen Hao. Chen Hao stretched out his hand and held the card. Main God period Mountain God. Change. The card disappeared from Chen Hao's hand, and a figure appeared in front of Chen Hao. Chen Hao looked at that figure. A middle-aged muscular man appeared in front of Chen Hao. It's a giant bear in humanoid form. De Xiong opened his eyes, and his pupils reflected Chen Hao's appearance. Seeing Chen Hao, the big bear's pupils condensed. It raised its hand, put it in front of its chest, and saluted Chen Hao, Master. Its sound was like muffled thunder, exploding in the ears. Chen Hao said with a smile, very energetic, not bad. Daxiang raised his head and looked at Chen Hao, as if waiting for Chen Hao's next instruction. Big Bear has always been like this. He is unsmiling and always behaves like a bear. Chen Hao crossed his chest with both hands, raised one hand, stroked his chin, and looked at Big Bear. I heard, Big Pig said, you went to the god of the earth to learn how to open up the god of the earth's domain. Big Bear nodded slightly, yes. Why do you suddenly want to open up a divine realm? Chen Hao smiled, isn't the divine realm big enough? The function of the divine realm is actually to open up an independent space and then use that space as your own home. To put it simply, it is to create your own territory. But the god realm is already big enough. Daxiang said, I want to use my power to open up a territory of my own. Although the divine world is very big, it is the body of a big pig. It feels a bit strange to open up my territory on a big pig. 2. Although the divine realm is very large, the divine realm itself is a beast. The big bear's body is a bear, and it pays more attention to its territory. It is not like the small wood spirit, which can just plunge into the ground and give birth to children. Chen Hao touched his chin and looked at Big Bear. I have been to God's realm, and the space in God's realm is not very big. There was a bit of regret on Big Bear's face, and he nodded slightly, yes. Chen Hao thought for a moment and looked at Big Bear. Have you ever thought about going to other planets to create your own world? The Big Bear was startled and looked at Chen Hao. Other planets? Chen Hao smiled, yes, the God realm can be said to be a small world, and the world where VAF continent is located can be regarded as a big world. You have also seen both the God realm and the big world where VAF continent is located. They are all spherical. If you pay more attention, you will find that many of the stars we see in the night sky are from worlds far away from us. They are all spherical. People over there call a spherical world like this a planet. When the Big Bear heard this, it looked astonished, but, going from one planet to another requires a certain distance. It frowned and said while thinking, from the God realm to the VAF continent, we can use Big Pig's teleportation array or teleport there, but in other worlds, we do not have teleportation arrays. At the same time, because there is no specific distance, there is no way to directly use teleportation to where we want to go. If it is a phased teleportation, we will inevitably teleport into the gap in the plane and then be strangled. Just like the fire phoenix before. After listening to what Big Bear said, Chen Hao suddenly realized something. You call space a gap in the plane. The Big Bear nodded slightly. This is the name of Badra and the other main gods. They call the entire world where VAF continent is located as one plane, and the god realm is another plane. There is a restricted area between the planes, and they call it a crack in the plane, and you will die if you enter it. 2. With the strength of the Lord God, he must have tried to fly out of the planet and go to outer space before. I guess some gods died once or twice for this. When thinking of this, the figure of Satya appeared in Chen Hao's mind. I guess that stuff is indispensable. You will die if you enter outer space, so did those gods name outer space as a plane gap? Chen Hao looked at Big Bear. Don't listen to those idiots. The plane is the planet, and there are no plane cracks outside the planet, but outer space. It's just that the environment in outer space is special. No living thing can survive without any defense. Dazu, Dear Girl, and Xiaoying, who were listening to Chen Hao's words, had shiny eyes. The dear girl showed a smile and thought to herself, are you saying that you are not the god of creation? Next, I want you to evolve again, this time to ascend. After evolving, you can move freely in outer space. Chen Hao looked at the Big Bear. When the time comes, I will let Xiaoying use instant. I'll take you to another planet and see if I can open up a new world. Hearing this, the Big Bear's eyes lit up and he said, that would be great. Chen Hao took out a card from the universal book and the card flew out. Big Bear reached out and took it. Chen Hao said, after eating it, go back to the book and rest. You can evolve Ascension tomorrow. Although the Big Bear is in human form, it is nearly 3 meters tall and has muscles all over its body, just like a bear. In its big hand, that card was extremely mini. Transformation, Big Bear said. The cards turned into smaller second-level gems. Big Bear opened his mouth and threw the second-level gem into his mouth like peanuts. Looking at Big Bear like this, it looks like he didn't eat anything. Change. Big Bear's figure turned into a card, floating in front of Chen Hao. Chen Hao put the card away. He looked at the card in his hand, then opened the book beside him and put the card into the book. Master, you are indeed the god of creation. Suddenly, a voice came. Chen Hao was startled. He looked at the source of the voice, and saw the dear girl looking at Chen Hao with a smile. Chen Hao looked at the dear girl. What do you mean? The dear girl smiled and said, before, Master, you told the god of law that you are not the god of creation. This is just their name. I thought it was true. Now I am sure, Master, you are the god of creation. If the Master is not the god of creation, how can the Master know that the plane is a planet and the plane gap is outer space? The dear girl said with a smile. When Chen Hao heard this, he opened his mouth and wanted to explain, but it was not easy to explain. He touched his nose and stood up. I'm a little hungry, let's go have lunch. The dear girl looked at Chen Hao's back, her mouth corners raised, and she was more convinced that Chen Hao was the god of creation. Chen Hao was thinking while eating lunch. Tomorrow, after the Big Bear has undergone genetic evolution and is no longer restricted by the outer space environment, can it go to other planets and live on other planets? If it can live on other planets, can it create some life forms belonging to its race on other planets? If it can, it will be interesting. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 305. Xiaoying, let's go to the nearest planet in a while. Xiaoying stood aside, looking at Chen Hao who was sitting at the dining table and eating lunch, and nodded slightly. The whole morning was spent upgrading the beast, and Chen Hao planned to relax and go to other planets. At present, Xiaoying has undergone ascension evolution, and it can move freely in outer space. And like himself, who can share Xiaoying's ability, naturally can also move freely like Xiaoying. Now, Chen Hao just wants to see the nearest planet and see what the breath planet of this world is like. After lunch, Chen Hao and Xiaoying came to the balcony. "Master, if you want to go to other planets, I think you should make some preparations." Before, Xiaoying gained some special abilities after the Ascension evolution. "Now Xiaoying will share these abilities with you," Xiaoying said. Hearing this, Chen Hao raised his eyebrows. "After continuing to gain new abilities, do I have to share the new abilities before I can use them?" Chen Hao smiled and said, "Share it?" Xiaoying nodded slightly. Xiaoying was covered in black mist. After the black mist appeared on Xiaoying, Chen Hao also covered in black mist. Suddenly, Chen Hao felt that his vision had become wider. Although Chen Hao was now standing on the balcony of the palace, he found that he could see everything millions of kilometers away. He could even open his eyes in the outer space of the God Realm and look at the whole picture of the God Realm. It was a blue mini-planet. Chen Hao came back to his senses and looked at Xiaoying standing in front of him. Xiaoying looked at Chen Hao. "Master, it's okay." Chen Hao's eyes were full of surprise. He raised his hand and looked at his hand. Although he was looking at his hand now, Chen Hao felt that he could also see everything happening in other places at the same time. Before, Chen Hao could use Xiaoying's power to sense the creatures around him through magic, but that was just a sense, and there was no way to determine what the creatures looked like. But now, Chen Hao can clearly see everything within a radius of millions of kilometers. This feeling is like God. Is this the difference between the ascending evolution and the main God stage? Is this too big? Chen Hao's heart moved. The surrounding environment changed. Chen Hao's figure appeared in outer space. His body was suspended in the air, and he looked around. "Is this space?" Chen Hao spoke subconsciously. But he found that his voice could not be heard at all. "Sure enough, it is space," Chen Hao thought to himself, and he looked around. In sight, no matter from top to bottom, left to right, front to back, there was only darkness and stars of all sizes in the darkness. There was no place to stand under his feet, and Chen Hao could not feel what was under his feet. He used Xiaoying's divine power to generate a black crystal under his feet. He stepped on the crystal and looked around. This is in space 3 million kilometers away from the God Realm. And this is the ability of Xiaoying after the ascending evolution. At the same time, Chen Hao also realized one thing: even if the distance is so far, he can still use Xiaoying's ability. In other words, as Xiaoying's strength becomes stronger and stronger, the range of its shared ability will also increase. It's really convenient. "Master," suddenly, a voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. Chen Hao came back to his senses and looked at Xiaoying beside him. Xiaoying had already caught up. Xiaoying didn't open her mouth just now, but spoke directly in Chen Hao's mind. After Chen Hao obtained Xiaoying's ability to share, he also knew that this ability existed, so he was not surprised. Book. Chen Hao silently read the book in his mind. Chen Hao wanted AI to give him a map so that he could know which planet was closest to him. Chen Hao opened the book and looked at the card slot that was used to hold the identification sensor card. Chen Hao was slightly startled when he saw it. A brand new card appeared in the card slot. There was a name on the card. Props Database. Description: Database, upgraded from the identification sensor. The identification sensor can be used to serve the owner's training needs on the myriad races star. When the owner of the identification sensor card has the ability to leave the planet, the identification sensor will be upgraded to meet the owner's needs. Looking at the description on the card, Chen Hao was stunned. In addition to the evolution of the beast, this identification sensor can also evolve. Chen Hao thought of the god who looked like an angel before, and he felt more and more that the guy was not afraid of giving too much, but was afraid of not giving enough. Chen Hao picked up the database card. Transform. The card turned into a diamond crystal with a light blue halo, floating in front of Chen Hao. In this dark universe, it is emitting a blue halo, which looks a little bright. Chen Hao thought, How to use this thing? Suddenly, the crystal lit up slightly. If you have any questions, as long as you ask, I can give you the answer based on the relevant knowledge in the database. A mechanical voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. Chen Hao's heart moved. It was obvious that this voice was the voice of this database. I want to know the distance and direction of the planet closest to me, Chen Hao thought silently in his heart. The diamond-shaped crystal in front of Chen Hao's eyes lit up slightly, and suddenly, the entire crystal turned into a three-dimensional galaxy diagram. In the middle of this galaxy diagram, there is a red star, and around this red star are 10 stars of different sizes. There is a green dot between the second and third red stars. Obviously, this is the distribution map of the galaxy where Chen Hao is now. The red star in the middle is the star, and the 10 stars surrounding it are its planets. As for the green dot between the second and third stars, it is its location. Within this star chart, there are all kinds of data. Among them, Chen Hao could see that the second planet closest to his location was only about 6 million kilometers away. That direction. Chen Hao subconsciously looked in that direction, and saw that it was the planet where VAF continent was located. In other words, if you want to go to other planets, there is only the third planet. And that planet is 53 million kilometers away from itself. Please choose the planet you want to go to, and I will guide you in the direction. When Chen Hao took a look, he stretched out his hand and clicked on the planet. When Chen Hao clicked, the entire star map suddenly shrank and turned back into the rhombus-shaped blue crystal it had just been. The blue crystal rotates slowly, and it suddenly emits a red light, which shines directly in one direction. Seeing this, Chen Hao's eyes lit up slightly. This is very convenient. You don't need to take me with you. I will follow you and guide you along the way. A mechanical voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. Chen Hao looked at Xiaoying and said with a smile, "Let's go and walk in the direction pointed by the red light." Xiaoying nodded slightly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 306. More than 50 million kilometers is an extremely long distance. For ordinary people, this distance is unimaginable. But for Chen Hao, it is nothing. Chen Hao used teleportation more than 10 times, and he arrived at his destination. And it took him less than 5 minutes. Chen Hao looked at the strange planet in front of him. Chen Hao's eyes were more puzzled. What is this? The outer periphery of this planet is surrounded by a huge metal device, which is like a planetary ring, surrounding the entire planet. The entire device is made of black metal, and there are lines of green light on it. That is the environment transformation ring. This ring can change the environment of the entire planet, making the environment of the entire planet that is not suitable for life to become suitable for life. A mechanical voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. It was the figure of the database. The database is a rhombus crystal, floating beside Chen Hao, and actively following Chen Hao. But the problem is, such a big thing, it is not so simple to build such a big thing in outer space. Could it be that there are aliens on this planet, and their technology is already so powerful? Chen Hao felt a little shocked. Even if it was placed in the technological power of his previous life, it could not reach this point. If this environmental transformation ring was created by the creatures on that planet, how amazing would the civilization development of the creatures on that planet be? With some shock, Chen Hao slowly adjusted his emotions and then looked at the planet. What he saw was a dark planet. This planet is covered by layers of dark clouds. Their ground is black, and the sky is full of dark clouds. The whole planet looks black. Let's go in and take a look first, Chen Hao thought. He used Xiaoying's power to push his body towards the planet. When his body entered the planet, Chen Hao felt a dark scene in front of his eyes, because Chen Hao entered the dark clouds. When he entered the dark clouds, Chen Hao felt the gravity from the planet. The body fell madly with gravity. The sound of wind came to Chen Hao's ears twice, and because of the high speed, coupled with the friction of the atmosphere, Chen Hao only felt a burning sensation around him, and suddenly a red color appeared in front of his eyes. Chen Hao could see through his vision that his whole body turned into a red fireball. This was caused by the burning of oxygen around him. However, for Chen Hao, he didn't feel anything. Chen Hao and Xiaoying were wrapped in flames, turned into two fireballs, and flew into this strange planet. Boom! Boom! Accompanied by two loud noises. The earth trembled. Two huge pits appeared on the ground, and dust was flying. When the dust dispersed, Chen Hao and Xiaoying appeared at the edge of the pit. Chen Hao looked around. Here, this environment, why does it feel familiar? Chen Hao looked around, and his pupils condensed slightly. I saw that not far away, a pair of pupils with red light were staring at him. Chen Hao looked closely and saw the appearance of those guys clearly. They were bronze mantises. Bronze, mantis. Chen Hao's pupils condensed slightly, he raised his head and looked at the dark sky above. Is this the endless cave? A group of bronze mantises pounced on Chen Hao. A black shadow flashed, and one after another bronze mantises were cut into two pieces. All the bronze mantises nearby were cut into two pieces in an instant. It was Xiaoying who took action. The surroundings suddenly became quiet. In addition to the corpses of bronze mantises, there were only Chen Hao and Xiaoying in the middle of the corpses. Chen Hao was lost in thought. It turned out that the portal at the entrance of the endless cave was actually the portal connecting to this planet. Similar to the portals of the God Realm and the WAF continent. I didn't expect that the planet closest to the planet of the WAF continent was actually the world of the endless cave. Suddenly, there was a gust of wind. At the same time, a red light lit up on the right. Master, there was a voice. Chen Hao came back to his senses. He looked at Xiaoying, but saw Xiaoying looking forward. Chen Hao looked in the direction Xiaoying was looking, and saw that the sky in front was red, and a red figure was rushing towards the side quickly. The red figure fell from the sky. It quickly landed in front of Chen Hao and Xiaoying. The flames surrounded it, and the flames slowly dissipated, and the figure revealed its original appearance. It smiled at Chen Hao. I just wondered why there was such a big commotion here. It turned out to be the master. This figure was the Fire Phoenix. Yesterday, Chen Hao sent the Fire Phoenix to the Endless Cave to let it hunt the Golden Mantis. Seeing the Fire Phoenix, Chen Hao was completely sure that this was the Endless Cave. Master, why are you here? Is there anything to do? You can tell me directly, I can handle it, he. The Fire Phoenix smiled. Chen Hao looked at the Fire Phoenix, and he smiled. I just came to take a look, and by the way, I see you. I'm glad to see that you are okay. The Fire Phoenix was startled, then it came back to its senses, smiled, and folded its hands under its chest. Master, I am the Fire Phoenix, how could I be in trouble? If I am really in trouble, the worst that can happen is that I will die and go back. Even the powerful enemies can't do anything to me. The corner of Chen Hao's mouth twitched. The Fire Phoenix's answer was really hilarious. However, what the Fire Phoenix said was right. It died on the spot, and the enemy really couldn't do anything to it. Chen Hao said, have you met the Antal people and the Tyliode people? The Fire Phoenix hummed, I have met them. The Antal people even greeted me. I have also met the Tyliode people. Those guys avoided me when they saw me, and I was too lazy to pay attention to them. The Antal people greeted you. Chen Hao raised his eyebrows. The Fire Phoenix nodded, yes, they seemed to treat me as a friend, and they were quite enthusiastic. I guess it's because the master saved them before. Chen Hao thought of Qi Lian. Qi Lian knew that Huo Feng was with him. He had saved Qi Lian before, and he guessed that it was Qi Lian who mentioned him and Huo Feng to other Antal people. Master, I spent a day yesterday and collected a stack of these things. Huo Feng took out a stack of cards and handed it to Chen Hao. Chen Hao took a look, took it and looked at it. Golden period golden mantis. Silver period silver mantis. This stack of cards contains both of these things, and there are more than 30 of them in a stack, which is a lot of them. The golden mantis is actually comparable to a gem beast of the 3rd level gem level. And Huo Feng just used a 2nd level gem to perform an ascension evolution. Is Huo Feng considered to be a cross-level kill? Maybe not. Because the main god level beast can defeat the silver mantis. From this, it can be confirmed that the power obtained by the evolution of the beast is not simply compared with the level of the pulse beast or the level of the gem beast. And ascension evolution, according to AI, is a qualitative ascension for the beast. It was normal for the fire phoenix to easily defeat the golden mantis. Master, how am I? Am I okay? The fire phoenix had a smile on its face and looked at Chen Hao expectantly, its eyes like flame gems shining. Chen Hao smiled, not bad, great. The fire phoenix grinned, then Master, I will continue to explore. I feel that there are still some powerful guys in this world. I want to play with them. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 307. When Chen Hao heard this, he nodded slightly and said with a smile, you can play, but you have to pay attention to safety. The fire phoenix spread out 3 pairs of flaming wings behind it, and it flew into the air. Hearing Chen Hao's words, it smiled and said, Master, don't worry. At worst, I will die. They can't do anything to me. Let's go, see you next time, Master. As he said, the fire phoenix flapped its wings and turned into a ray of fire and disappeared in front of Chen Hao. Chen Hao crossed his arms and watched the fire phoenix leave. He raised his head slightly and looked at the dark sky above. This planet is the Endless Cave. What about other planets? Chen Hao looked at Xiaoying, let's go and take a look at other planets. Xiaoying nodded slightly. Chen Hao, guided by the database, took Xiaoying to continue approaching the next planet. While using teleportation to get closer to the planet little by little, Chen Hao thought. Endless Cave, or should I give it a new name, maybe Wu Jinxing. No one knows that the planet where the WAF continent is located is a planet. Obviously, the WAF continent has no name, so let's call it WAF Star. The portal between Endless Star and WAF Star is definitely not born naturally. In other words, this portal should be built by a certain existence. On the WAF Star side, the oldest existence I know is Shataya. But according to Shataya, the portal of the Endless Cave already existed before it was born. In other words, before Shataya, there was an even older existence on the WAF Star side. Like Endless Star, the location is too far away from the star and is not a suitable place to live, so there is an environmental transformation ring to make it suitable for life. But the environmental transformation ring, the kind of technology that exceeds ordinary people's imagination, is definitely not built by the Antal or the Iron Lot. In other words, there was an ancient civilization with very strong technological power on Endless Star before, which created this environmental transformation ring. This galaxy seems to contain many secrets. However, this is not very important. Chen Hao is not a researcher. He is more interested in whether he can see more interesting creatures, and then catch them and cultivate them for fun. That is more interesting. The Endless Cave is the Endless Star, so, Chen Hao guessed that the Gem World is probably one of the 10 planets. But there are always 8 different planets among the 10 planets. What will the other 8 look like? What kind of creatures will grow inside? Chen Hao wants to see and collect some. Endless Star is the 3rd planet orbiting the star. Chen Hao and Xiaoying continue to teleport outward and come to the location of the 4th planet. Looking at the planet in front of him, Chen Hao's eyes light up slightly. Master, This planet is similar to the planet on the WAF continent. Xiao Ying's voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. Hearing this, Chen Hao nodded slightly. The planet in front of him is the same as the Endless Star. It is surrounded by an environmental transformation ring, and the planet inside the environmental transformation ring is a colorful planet. This planet is like WAF, with more than 70% of its area covered by oceans. Green forests can be seen on the land outside the ocean. This should not be the gem world, this world is more like WAF. Go in and take a look. Chen Hao's voice fell. His figure disappeared on the spot, and when Xiao Ying saw it, her figure also disappeared. Chen Hao felt the surrounding environment change, and when he came back to his senses again, Chen Hao's figure had appeared in a forest. Chen Hao looked at the forest. This forest is somewhat similar to the Warcraft forest. This world has the breath of magic. Xiao Ying's voice came. Chen Hao's heart moved. When using teleportation in outer space, the divine power used is a unique energy, which is mixed with magic. When Xiao Ying uses teleportation, she uses her own divine power, because magic does not exist in outer space. There are magic elements in the Endless Star, but very little, and there is no magic in the gem world. However, when Chen Hao heard Xiao Ying's words and felt it carefully, he could feel that there is indeed magic in this world, and it is very rich. Swish! Suddenly, there was a sound. Chen Hao looked towards the source of the sound, and saw a short creature with long pointed ears, a long nose, holding a stick, and a green body, walking out of the bushes, followed by 4 of its kind. Seeing this thing, Chen Hao's pupils suddenly condensed. Is this a goblin? Chen Hao's eyes widened. Ah, the leading goblin shouted, and 5 goblins suddenly pounced on Chen Hao. Chen Hao raised his eyebrows. A black shadow flashed by, and the 5 goblins turned into 6 sections. The 6 broken limbs rolled on the ground, and green blood flowed. It was Xiao Ying who took action. Chen Hao looked at the goblin corpse lying on the ground twitching. He looked at the database, identify it. The diamond-shaped blue crystal changed and turned into a blue screen, and text appeared in the screen. Lower-level monster goblin. Description: Goblin, a common monster, has the same strength as an average adult, but likes to act in groups. It has a mean character and loves to plunder. Chen Hao crossed his arms, raised one hand, and stroked his chin. He stretched his eyebrows. A breath of another world is coming towards me. When I was staying on WAF Star, I saw many strange beasts with oriental names. I wondered why these common monsters from other worlds did not exist on WAF Star. It turns out that they are not non-existent, but they all ran here. However, goblins are not cute things, so I am not very interested. Chen Hao retracted his gaze. In this case, there should be other monsters from other worlds in this world. Rustle. Suddenly, Chen Hao heard the rustling sound again. Chen Hao looked at the source of the sound and found that goblins walked out of the woods one after another. Chen Hao looked around and found that the green goblins had surrounded Chen Hao and Xiao Ying. Ah, the goblins gave a creepy and smug smile, and then pounced on Chen Hao and Xiao Ying. Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows. Soon, the surroundings returned to silence. However, around Chen Hao and Xiao Ying, there were more goblin corpses, and the green blood dyed the ground green. Chen Hao closed his eyes and used Xiao Ying's ability to check the surrounding environment. Xiao Ying's vision allows Chen Hao to see all the environments within millions of kilometers. And everything he saw made Chen Hao a little puzzled. Goblin, or goblin, all goblin. There are no other monsters. Goblin everywhere. At the same time, Chen Hao also saw some human buildings, but those human buildings were abandoned at this moment. Chen Hao frowned and expanded his vision. Still goblin, goblin of various levels. Goblin warriors, goblin generals, goblin magicians, and so on. But, there are no other creatures. On this planet, there are various human buildings, but these buildings are already overgrown with plants, and there are human skeletons covered with grass in the buildings. But, there are no living people. For a moment, Chen Hao had a shocking idea. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 308. This planet has been occupied by goblins. All the humans that existed in this world before have been killed by goblins. The vision provided by Chen Hao through Xiaoying's ability is enough for him to stand in place and see the situation of any place on the entire planet. After Chen Hao scanned it, he was basically sure. This planet has now been occupied by goblins. Judging from the dilapidated and old buildings and human skeletons, there should have been human civilization on this planet before. But for some reason, humans disappeared. From everything he has seen so far, Chen Hao can only draw one conclusion, that is, humans were killed to extinction by goblins. The figures of Chen Hao and Xiaoying appeared in the dilapidated building complex. The style of this building complex is similar to the city in the Middle Ages, surrounded by high walls, and inside are houses one after another. However, 2 walls in the entire city have collapsed, and the other cities are also dilapidated due to the corrosion of time, and they are covered with green plants. The buildings within the city walls were all in ruins, with green plants growing everywhere. The entire city was covered with plants. Of course, in addition to plants, there were also groups of goblins walking aimlessly in the city. When these goblins saw Chen Hao and Xiaoying appear, they rushed towards Chen Hao like ants encountering meat. The result was that they were naturally turned into corpses under Xiaoying's divine power. Chen Hao ignored the sound of flesh and blood being torn apart from all around him. He slowly squatted down and brushed away the yellow sand on the ground with his hands. The yellow sand was brushed away, revealing the floor tiles under his feet. It seems that a lot of cruel things have happened on this strange planet. Chen Hao looked at the blue crystal floating beside him. Database, tell me, where did the humans on this planet go? Although Chen Hao had his own guesses, if he wanted to be sure, he had to ask the database. I just don't know if the database records the human history on this planet. This planet used to be a planet where humans and monsters coexisted. Humans had the advantage at first, but then goblins appeared among the monsters. Goblins have the ability to learn and evolve. Humans didn't know that at first, and just treated goblins as ordinary lower-level monsters. When humans realized that something was wrong, it was too late. The number of goblins was extremely large, and at the same time, the highest-level monster Goblin Emperor evolved from the goblins. Under the leadership of the Goblin Emperor, humans and other creatures on the planet were all slaughtered by goblins and became food for goblins. A mechanical voice sounded in Chen Hao's ears, introducing everything that happened on this planet. After hearing this, Chen Hao couldn't help but close his eyes and take a deep breath. What an unpleasant story. Chen Hao slowly opened his eyes. So, if there is a Goblin Emperor, can goblins also evolve into advanced intelligent life and become an independent civilization? Civilization refers to all social behaviors of a population after it has escaped from the state of barbarism. Although some goblins have evolved into Goblin Emperors, they have not been able to get rid of their bestiality. Although they have learned human cunning and fighting methods, they are still primitive. At present, the goblin race has begun to kill each other and eat their own kind because other creatures have run out of food. It seems that these goblins are more like ants, and the Goblin Emperor is more like the Emperor of Ants. Although their fighting power is strong enough to destroy other creatures on the entire planet, they have not gotten rid of their primitiveness. Although they are in human form, they are actually beasts. However, the development of civilization takes time. Perhaps if these goblins are given a few 100,000 years, they may really become a civilization. But it's a pity. Chen Hao doesn't like creatures like goblins. Chen Hao was just thinking about which planet to find for the big bear to live on. Maybe this planet is good. It's just right for Big Bear to have nothing to do and practice. Goblins are too ugly and have no feelings. I feel that these things are not even as good as a wild wolf on the roadside. Chen Hao looked at the broken limbs of the goblins around him, and he retracted his gaze and looked at Xiaoying. Xiaoying came back to his senses and looked at Chen Hao. Master. Chen Hao smiled, it's almost time, let's go back first, and continue exploring other places tomorrow. Xiaoying nodded slightly. After making up their minds, Chen Hao and Xiaoying disappeared from the spot. 2 hours after Chen Hao and Xiaoying left, a giant goblin with muscles all over his body and a golden crown on his head appeared with a group of goblins where Chen Hao and Xiaoying were before. The goblin emperor held a golden scepter in his hand. He looked at the goblin corpses around him, and his pupils glowed with a ferocious light. He raised his head, wow! A strange cry resounded throughout the forest. All the other goblins in the forest who heard the voice of the goblin emperor took action. They began to disperse, as if they were looking for something. The goblin king looked at the goblin corpse on the ground, drooling from the corners of his mouth. A goblin nearby picked up a goblin leg and handed it to the goblin king. The goblin king opened his mouth and began to eat it. Chen Hao did not see this scene. If he had seen it, he would have guessed that the goblin emperor was giving instructions to let other goblins search for the enemy's location, which was the location of Chen Hao and Xiaoying. It was obvious that the goblin emperor was planning to take revenge. And Chen Hao has returned to his room. At this moment he had finished taking a shower and was lying on the bed, ready to sleep. He leaned on the pillow and glanced sideways at the window next to him. Through the window, you can see the dark night sky outside and the stars and 3 full moons in the night sky. Chen Hao looked away, raised his hand and looked at his white hand. This feels like a dream. Chen Hao has forgotten how long it has been since he came to VAF continent. After all, there is no calendar in this world. But looking back, I realize that not much time has passed. But while catching and cultivating pets, he seemed to have done something incredible without even realizing it. Created the divine world, traveled through space, and went to other planets. It's really like a dream, however, I don't feel anything. I was a little surprised at first, but now I don't feel anything at all. Am I numb? Chen Hao touched his chin. I guess I've seen too many magical things, so I'm a little numb. Suddenly, an idea suddenly appeared in Chen Hao's mind. I'm a human. Chen Hao was excited. He stood up and leaned against the bed. He looked at his hands and clasped his fingers. I almost forgot, before I became the master of the beasts, I was a human being, a human being. No wonder I felt so unhappy when I heard from the database that all humans were killed by goblins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 309. Chen Hao sat leaning against the head of the bed, thinking about the goblin planet. The big bear wants to have his own territory. That planet is not bad. You can give that planet to the big bear and let it play. As for those goblins, the big bear has already reached the stage of the Lord God. Tomorrow it will ascend and evolve and become an existence beyond the Lord God. The Lord God can create his own race, and so can the big bear. Perhaps, the big bear can be allowed to create its own race there, and at the same time use the race it created to clear out those goblins. Like cleaning out the bugs. After thinking about it, Chen Hao lay back on the bed. Close your eyes and go to sleep. Time flew by and it was the next morning. Chen Hao sat in front of the balcony and looked at the busy little ones outside the palace. These little guys used magic to build houses one after another around the palace where Chen Hao was. Because of the God realm, Chen Hao released all the beasts. These little guys didn't rest in Chen Hao's book at night, so they naturally started to make their own homes. A set of houses with different postures. The little guy like Shuiyi's house is completely an igloo made of ice. Only a little guy like Shuiyi who likes ice can get used to living in that kind of place. Shuiyi is still a six-winged ice crystal angel in the divine monarch stage. Maybe you can find some time to evolve it? Before that, let's take a look at the situation of Little Diamond, Big Bear, and Two Wolves. Book. The universal book appeared in front of Chen Hao. Chen Hao sat on the vine chair and opened the book leisurely. Second level gem small diamonds. Seeing this, Chen Hao raised his eyebrows and evolved, from the first level to the second level. Chen Hao took out the card. Change. The card turned into a figure. It is the figure of Little Diamond. This figure looks like that of an 11 or 12-year-old girl. He is estimated to be about 1.4 meters tall. It has fair skin and has long hair made of diamonds on its head, which ends abruptly at its waist. The sun shines on its hair, and the long hair made of diamonds reflects the colorful halo. It was draped in a black shirt, which covered its slender figure. Diamond people seem to be like this. They all look like girls, but in fact they are neutral creatures, or it should be said that they have no gender. Because they are born from certain gem mines and do not need to reproduce. However, Chen Hao thought that through evolution, it could grow bigger, but he didn't expect that it would still be the same size as a first-level gem. In other words, is Little Diamond's initial body shape its final body shape? The Little Diamond's eyelashes moved, and it slowly opened its eyes. Its eyes were made of colorful diamonds, and the black eyelid in the middle was filled with the colorful luster of diamonds. It opened its eyes and looked at Chen Hao. When their eyes met, Little Diamond's eyes were shining, and it said, "Master." It looked at Chen Hao, then raised its hand, looked at its own hand, and then looked down at its body. Little Diamond's eyes lit up, and a smile appeared on its little face. "Master, I feel like I have become stronger." Chen Hao smiled. Now, this guy should be honest, right? Suddenly, Chen Hao noticed that the smile on Little Diamond's face quickly disappeared. Its eyebrows bowed downwards, and it grimaced again. "But, it's not much stronger, I still feel so weak." Little Diamond grimaced and murmured to himself, "How can I protect my master if I am so weak? What should I do? I have to become stronger, I'm so weak, so annoying, I'm so weak." It had a sad face and kept muttering in its mouth. That cute little face was as bitter as a bitter melon. Looking at Little Diamond's appearance, Chen Hao had a smile on his face. This is already at the level of a second-level gem, but it's still weak. It's okay. Chen Hao has a way to comfort it. Chen Hao smiled and said, "I still have a way to increase your strength." When Little Diamond heard this, his eyes lit up slightly, and he looked at Chen Hao expectantly. Seeing Xiao Diamond's expectant expression, Chen Hao smiled helplessly. Some beasts themselves give it the opportunity to increase its strength, but it has no interest in increasing its strength. As for Little Diamond, he has a phobia of insufficient firepower. That's fine, whatever the beasts want, you can give it to them if you can. If they have their own ideas, they can do it themselves. The growth path of small animals is not just the path of gaining strength. Since Little Diamond wants to gain strength, then give it strength. Chen Hao took out a third-level gem card from the universal book. Change. The card turned into a treasure jade, and Chen Hao handed the treasure jade to Little Diamond. Little Diamond's eyes were shining. She took it and looked at Chen Hao. "This is similar to the one yesterday." Chen Hao nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Eat it and you can become stronger." Yeah, Little Diamond was happy, threw the gem into his mouth, and ate it. After eating, Little Diamond looked at Chen Hao. "Master, do I want to rest?" Yes, Chen Hao looked into Little Diamond's innocent eyes and smiled, "Of course." Saying that, Chen Hao stretched out his hand and stroked Little Diamond's head. "Get it? Hard, cool, and smooth. Although it looks like hair, it is actually diamonds. This touch is hard, just like touching a statue. However, its hair is much smoother. Diamond looked confused, not knowing what Chen Hao was doing. Diamond was not a flesh and blood body like Wind Wolf. Wind Wolf would feel comfortable when being touched, but Diamond did not feel anything. Chen Hao retracted his hand and smiled, "Well, go back to the book and rest first, so that tomorrow you can become stronger than today." Yeah, Diamond smiled. Changed Diamond's figure turned into a card. Chen Hao looked at the card in his hand and put it back into the book. Then he took out the card of the Big Bear. Gene Evolution Mountain God. Success. Chen Hao raised his eyebrows. All he could say was that there was no accident with the book. If the real Lord God was allowed to ascend and evolve without the help of the book, he would probably die at any time. But with the book, no matter who it was, as long as they met the conditions for ascending and evolving, they could succeed. Transform. The card flew out, fell to the ground, and turned into a human-shaped big bear. After the big bear appeared, it slowly opened its eyes and looked at Chen Hao. It raised its big hand and placed it on its chest. "Master." Chen Hao smiled and said, "How do you feel?" The big bear slowly closed its eyes and looked at Chen Hao. "I feel that I have become stronger, much stronger than before." Chen Hao smiled, "That's right, I will call the second wolf out first, and we will go to another planet later. I have prepared a planet suitable for you, and that planet can just be your territory. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world." Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 310. Big Bear nodded slightly. Chen Hao released the two wolves who had successfully evolved. "Hey, Master, are you handsome again?" Erlang folded his hands on his chest, turned sideways, and struck a pose, showing all his muscles. Then he smiled at Chen Hao, revealing his canine teeth. The corner of Chen Hao's mouth twitched, and he ignored the sky. He stood up and said, "Let's go, Big Bear, Xiaoying, let's go to the Goblin Planet." "Huh? Master, where are you going?" Erlang hurriedly said. Hearing this, Chen Hao looked at Erlang and said, "The Big Bear wants a territory of his own, so I prepared one for him." "Oh? In other words, you are going to Uncle Bear's future home?" Erlang's eyes lit up and he smiled. Then, "Master, I want to go and see it too." "You want to go?" Chen Hao was startled. Erlang said, "Of course, Uncle Big Bear has always taken care of us three brothers. Of course we have to know where Uncle Big Bear lives." "Right, Uncle Big Bear." Seeing Erlang's eyes, De Xiong touched the back of his head and then looked at Chen Hao. Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled, "Okay, let's go together." With that said, Chen Hao looked at Xiaoying. "Xiaoying, use teleportation to take them to the Goblin Star." Hearing this, Xiaoying nodded slightly. It is quite a distance from here to the Goblin Star, but the current Xiaoying has improved his strength and used teleportation. It actually takes less than 5 or 6 minutes to get to the Goblin Star from here, just by using a few more teleports. Chen Hao only felt that the environment changed a few times and his vision went dark a few times. When he regained consciousness, he found that he was already in the Goblin Planet. The place where he is located in the dilapidated city from before. "Is this the Goblin Planet?" Erlang looked around curiously. "It looks a bit like the one on VAF continent, and there is also a smell of magic. It feels stronger than that on Valve continent." Chen Hao looked around and then looked at Big Bear. I saw that the Big Bear had his eyes closed, as if he was feeling something. "Are you satisfied?" Chen Hao said with a smile. The Big Bear opened its eyes, looked at Chen Hao, and nodded slightly. "Thank you, Master. I am very satisfied with this place. The magic here is rich and the environment is great." Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled. "However, there is a creature on this planet." "Yeah." Before Chen Hao could finish speaking, strange screams rang out from all around. When Chen Hao came back to his senses, he saw goblins emerging one after another from all directions. They stared at this direction, and then rushed towards this direction with strange screams. Xiao Ying's body moved, and the goblins turned into corpses one after another. When Chen Hao saw this, he looked at Big Bear. Well, the creatures I'm talking about are these green-skinned things. The Big Bear looked at those creatures and said, these things have the aura of magic element on them, and they are monsters. However, I have never seen such monsters on the Valve continent. Well, Chen Hao folded his hands on his chest and said, on this planet, there used to be all kinds of creatures, but because of this monster, all other creatures were killed and eaten. Now there are only get rid of this kind of creature. Chen Hao looked at the Big Bear and said with a smile, if you want to use this place as your territory, you need to get rid of them. Hearing this, Big Bear nodded, then looked at Chen Hao, can we kill them all? Chen Hao nodded slightly, okay, I have no interest in this kind of monster. You can get rid of them all. That's right. Chen Hao looked at Big Bear, I remember that you are the main god now. As the main god, you can create new species. You may be able to create your own race here, and then use that race to deal with the goblins. When the Big Bear heard this, he looked at the goblins who were rushing towards the side crazily and were killed by Xiaoying. It retracted its gaze and looked at Chen Hao, don't worry, master, I can deal with those guys. Hearing this, Chen Hao nodded slightly and said with a smile, then I'll look forward to your performance. Master Chen Hao heard the voice and looked at Xiaoying who was speaking. Xiaoying has already taken care of the nearby enemies. Xiaoying said, Master, if Big Bear wants to stay here, I think I can build a teleportation array here to connect it with the teleportation array in the God realm to facilitate travel. Okay. Chen Hao nodded slightly. He looked at Big Bear and said, first find a place to stay so that Xiaoying can arrange the teleportation array. Okay. Big Bear nodded. Master, that goblin looks much bigger than the other goblins. A voice came, the voice of Erlang. Chen Hao looked at the second wolf and saw that the second wolf was looking in one direction. Chen Hao looked in the direction Erlang was looking. I saw a giant goblin with a crown on his head, 2 meters tall, full of muscles, and wearing a golden cloak, staring at this side and walking towards this side. Behind it, swarms of goblins were moving towards the side like an ocean. The database next to Chen Hao projected a data screen. The most advanced monster Goblin Emperor. Goblin Emperor. Chen Hao raised his eyebrows, is this the final form of Goblin evolution? It's quite big. Next to the Goblin Emperor were 5 goblins, carrying a broadsword. The Goblin Emperor handed the scepter in his hand to the goblin beside him, and then picked up the huge broadsword with one hand. Holding the broadsword, its muscles bulged, and its already huge body looked even bigger. Wow, the Goblin Emperor opened his mouth and let out a howl. The howl resounded through the sky. After hearing the Goblin Emperor's call, the ocean-like goblins beside it rushed towards Chen Hao frantically. Damn human, go to hell, the Goblin Emperor made a sound. Hearing this sound, Chen Hao's pupils condensed slightly. This thing can actually speak human language? After the Goblin Emperor shouted, it held the broadsword in one hand and ran towards Chen Hao. In the process of rushing, the goblin in front was directly crushed by it. Stupid, the voice of the Big Bear sounded. The earth moved. The ground under the feet of the groups of goblins suddenly rose. Ah, the goblin screamed. The number of goblins is like the waves. At this moment, the ground under the goblins' feet also became like the waves and shook. As the ground shook, the goblins lost their balance and fell directly into the sunken position. Then the raised land moved and buried the sunken land, and the goblins that had just fallen inside were crushed into pieces by the earth. Boom, boom, boom. Accompanied by the rhythm of the earth. The green goblins just now disappeared in an instant and were swallowed up by the earth. Even the Goblin Emperor just now was buried by the earth. When the earth returned to calm, all that Chen Hao could see was a piece of yellow soil, as if it had been turned over a field. And the thousands of goblins all disappeared at this moment, and it was estimated that they had become nutrients for the earth. Tisk, you are worthy of being a mountain god. Chen Hao crossed his arms, touched his chin, and commented with emotion.